Hello friends, it's Lauren. Today we're going to be talking about all of the Christmas horror movies that I've watched recently. Besides the Creepmas vlog that I uploaded last week, I actually haven't talked at all about Christmas horror movies on this channel, which definitely needs to happen because I can't tell you just how life-changing it was to learn of the existence of holiday horror as a subgenre. It was like this light bulb went off and I realized I could Halloweenify any season, any time of year. It could have a creepy vibe, whether it is Easter time in the spring or Thanksgiving. It was just, yes, a revelation. I think a great place to start is gonna be with Eli Roth's History of Horror series, which I think is exclusively streaming on Shudder. I watched their holiday horror episode. Holidays can be stressful. Luckily, horror brings our wildest homicidal holiday fantasies to life. This episode was really enlightening. I don't think I realized just how far-reaching horror movies are within like the holiday subgenre. But what I didn't like about this episode and many of the episodes in this series is that they are really spoiler-filled. Like they kind of tell the entire plot and any kind of reveals within these episodes. So that's kind of a bummer that it's so spoiler-filled. What I really appreciated about this holiday horror episode is that it really did change up how I thought and viewed Black Christmas. The first three movies that I got to all are part of the Black Christmas franchise. Last Christmas was the first time I watched the 1974 Black Christmas movie. And then I learned this year that there is actually two remakes, one in 2019 and the other in 2006. Before I did my Black Christmas rewatch, I watched the remakes first. My whole logic with that is I wanted to not have that original one in my head. I kind of wanted to be a little bit more fresh, a little bit more open to liking these movies because I did really love Black Christmas. So let's start off with the 2019 version first, which is so incredibly hated on. And I kind of can understand why. Because, you know, the script itself is really not all that captivating. Nothing really is interesting going on here when you think about like subtext and symbolism. It really is heavy-handed from the creators down to us, the audience. Also, a major critique of this movie is just how heavy-handed it is with its politics. The concerns it raises about women, specifically in the context of a university or academic setting, are incredibly valid. But people are really speaking to how that kind of is overtaking the horror elements of what should be a horror movie. I've heard some people even say that this movie should not even have been called Black Christmas, like it's its own movie and really did not do much except maybe a few homages here and there to connect it back to its original source material. When it is, created by, majority women and it's talking about women's issues, I'm just kind of concerned, like, why are we so quick to hate this movie? Yes, there's some valid points, but it just makes me a little weary when people are a little overly enthusiastic about hating this movie. I'm just like, do you actually hate this movie or do you really just hate the fact that it's talking about things that are really important and then maybe make you feel uncomfortable? I don't think I hate this movie as much as the average person who's seen it. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that around this time I was in college. I was in a sorority as a young woman, and a lot of what they touch on in this movie, excluding the supernatural elements, I saw with my own eyes and was a part of that really toxic, unhealthy world. So already I felt like I could connect these characters to these women and I could see so much of myself and other young people that I knew in these stories and these characters. There was just something with like the flow and the editing and the story that felt really choppy to me and not as seamless as I would have wanted in a movie. And also I feel like the characters in many cases were a little bit one-dimensional, whether it's the villain or the heroes that we're supposed to be rooting for in this story. But ultimately, 2019's Black Christmas was not a winner for me, but I say that knowing that I really disliked the 2006 version so much more. The intro, like the prologue to this movie, weird. The acting of the dad from Scream Queens, so bizarre, so strange. I mean, to be fair, his lines were ridiculous, but still, I think he's gotten some acting classes since then. The eyeballs, the Christmas cookies, the relationship between the mother and the son. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I kind of mentally checked out with 30 minutes remaining in the movie, and I think one of the brighter spots for me is the choices by the director to kind of do like a high saturation when it comes to the scenes and then how they use the lighting, specifically the Christmas lights. I think that's a really seamless way that all three Black Christmas movies are connected by using lighting and darkness and the snowy, isolated house setting. That really captivated me. And then I watched the 1974 Black Christmas, and all was right with the world. I had such a huge appreciation seeing all these random, strange reboots and remixes of it. And then having watched that Eli Roth History of Horror holiday episode with all their kind of, analysis about the subtext and messaging of this film just made me off the charts fall in love with this movie. Like, I need a shirt, I need earrings, I need all the things. It will be my Christmas personality next year. Barb is obviously the best character out of all of them. Miss Mac is a hot mess that, I'm living for. None of these men can protect women. They are vulnerable. After wrapping up my Black Christmas adventure, I did want to try a movie that I'd never seen before, but I've heard so many things about, and that is the 1980 Christmas Evil. A toy factory worker, mentally scarred as a child upon learning Santa Claus is not real, suffers a nervous breakdown after being belittled at work and embarks on a Yuletide killing spree. From what I've heard, people really go into this movie thinking it's going to be a slasher, but ultimately it ends up being a very weird and strange Christmas Eve journey. I'm trying to think about the ways I would describe it to somebody who's never heard of it, but it really does feel more like a character study and a person's evolution, or I guess devolution, as they're trying to, wrap their heads around a lot of uncomfortable realizations about what it means to be older, the disillusionment of growing up into an adult, and how we want to really hold on so dearly to our childhood as this really safe space, because ultimately being an adult sucks. And he's at work, he's feeling like the things that are really meaningful to him don't really matter to the people at work. He's really feeling crushed and broken down by work. And you have a lot of conversations regarding workers and unions in the movie as well, which kind of makes me think that that's an important part of this story and a part of this character's devolution. I really feel like I could relate to this guy. I mean, not his murderous tendencies, of course, but more so how much he is clinging to the past, to his childhood, to nostalgia that makes him feel safe and comforted as an adult, where things are just so dicey, right? He goes to work, he hates it, he feels like he's so disconnected from his family and nobody really gets him or has his back. But Christmas always does. Santa always comes through for him, which means that the set design for this movie is so freaking cool. The Christmas items and motifs, they are just top notch. This movie has really great, immaculate Christmas vibes. And I think this movie is really trying to touch on how creepy Santa is in the folklore and what we tell kids about this grown man who is keeping track of them, keeping tabs of all their naughty or nice deeds. The next movie I got to was The Lodge, which came out in 2019. A soon-to-be stepmom is snowed in with her fiance's 2 children at a remote holiday village. Just as relations begin to thaw between the trio, some strange and frightening events take place. Unlike the other movies I've talked about so far on this list, this one has the most serious and bleak tone of them all so far. There's little to no humor in it. I mean, the first 20 minutes, you have somebody unaliving themselves. It is bleak. And it stays bleak. There's a creepy dollhouse, there's cult elements, there is an isolated house setting in a very, very snowed in location. There's lots of ungraceful parenting decisions that I think back as I was watching this with my mom. We're just turning to each other and saying we would never do this. Why did that happen? Why did these people make these decisions? My mom totally predicted the reveal that happens towards the end of this movie. I didn't see it coming. After finishing this movie, I felt like I had a tangle of negative emotions, and none of which are anything I really like to feel when I'm watching a movie or reading a book for that matter. And when I think about why I like Christmas horror, it's because of that contrast between the wholesomeness of the holiday season and then the slashing and dashing. Now that I've had a decent amount of Christmas horror movies under my belt, I feel like I've come to the conclusion that I like a holiday horror movie that is a little bit more playful, a little bit more silly, a little bit more zany. And this one is just way too serious and way too bleak with its tone. So this movie isn't really for me, although I do know a lot of people really like it. And things did not get any better for me, because then after watching this movie, I watched 2017's Better Watch Out. On a quiet suburban street, a babysitter must defend a 12-year-old boy from intruders, only to discover it's far from a normal house invasion. I feel like I don't have too much to say about this movie. Nothing will be positive because I, after 45 minutes, turned it off. I was forewarned that it wasn't gonna be like a typical home invasion movie. About 20-30 minutes into the movie, you get this big twist that really changes the game for the rest of the movie. When I got there, I was like, No, not for me, but I'll give it a shot. And then when I got 45 minutes in, I turned it off. The Christmas season, the Christmas time is definitely utilized in the setting of the movie. Like you really see that visually. I think ultimately it was that twist where I just, couldn't watch the movie, didn't really hold me, and I didn't find it interesting. There's no way I thought that this movie was gonna end in a way that was gonna be interesting or intriguing to me. The now adult Ricky talks to a psychiatrist about how he became a murderer after his brother, Billy, died, which leads back to Mother Superior. I searched high and low for a streaming service that had Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1. And for some reason, I couldn't find it anywhere. I really didn't want to pay $4. And so I posted on my Instagram asking people if it was worth the money to purchase it. But then my favorite film guru, Andrew, from It Came From the Page, swooped right on in like a little Christmas angel and told me that I should just watch the second movie in the franchise because it contains, I'm not kidding, 30 minutes of stock footage from the first one. I will never stop quoting Garbage Day, and I feel like if there's any movie I'd recommend anybody to watch and you want just like silly Christmas vibes, this one's gonna be it for you. But Andrew could not save me from 2012 Silent Night. The police force of a remote Midwestern town searched for a killer Santa Claus who was picking off citizens on Christmas Eve. This movie is not good, and I feel really bad for making my mother and my sister endure it. We had a Christmas movie night where we also watched A Christmas Carol, and then right after it was my turn to pick a movie. I chose Silent Night because it was available from my library. I just kind of got it and wanted just to see what it could be about. Definitely regret that. You have some like maybe B movie names in there. I mean, you have like Michael McDowell. I don't know what he was doing in this movie. I don't know how this movie is connected to Silent Night, Deadly Night. I'm imagining it's supposed to be a remake. I feel like I read that somewhere. Beyond just like a Garbage Day quote from one of the police officers randomly towards the end of the movie, I don't see any connection. But that wood chipper scene, ugh, very gross, very hard to watch, very graphic. This next one is not a movie, but it is the holiday episode of Tales from the Crypt. A greedy woman makes the mistake of murdering her husband while an escaped mental patient dressed in a Santa Claus outfit is on the loose. I was first introduced to this movie by my dad, who really loved the entire Tales from the Crypt franchise. That little crypt keeper haunted my nightmares as a kid, and this episode I have like bits and pieces of it in my head, so being able to watch it as an adult really helped kind of like put the whole story together for me. I didn't appreciate it as a kid, but now as an adult, that intro with the credits was perfect. Just like the contrast between this wholesome, Hallmark genre of Christmas movies, and then you have a very different thing playing out in the rest of the episode. If you're looking for somewhere to start in your Christmas horror movie journey, I would recommend this one because I don't even think it's any more than 30 minutes, and it's also free streaming on YouTube. I would really love to know if you have any strong opinions or thoughts about any of these movies one way or another, or if you have any Christmas horror movies that I should add to my list for this season or for next year. Watching Christmas horror movies is a fantastic way to get into the Christmas spirit, but if you're looking for more creepy Christmas vibes, definitely check out my vlog that I just released as I'm getting into the creepmas spirit myself. In this video, I review It's a Wonderful Knife. I also talk about some Christmas horror books I've been reading as well, and then I take you with me on some creepmas adventures. It's a really fun video. I will see you there. Bye!